In this section of the grant writing class, I intend to talk about the problem statement. In last week's video, I talked about how to write an introduction in a grant proposal. As I mentioned last week, the introduction is the first part of a grant proposal. I also gave you an example of an introduction written for a youth mentorship program in Lagos. Last week, I highlighted that an introduction should include the organization's mission, the vision, the programs, the board involvement, the volunteers' involvement, past grants, success stories, and a brief mention of everything positive about the organization. Now, those who have not watched last week's video, which was titled Grant Writing Part 1, you should attempt to watch it first on my YouTube channel to enable you to flow and understand this current section. The name of my YouTube channel is Prince Will Odidi. Next, after writing your introduction in a grant proposal, the next step is what we call the executive summary. But again, as I mentioned last week, even though the executive summary is the second item to be written, we usually keep it till the end of the proposal because the executive summary is a summary of every section in the proposal. So this takes us now to the problem statement. A problem statement in some advanced proposals, like let's say you're writing a government grant, is what they call needs assessment. So instead of calling it a problem statement, some people call it needs analysis. For those of you taking notes, it's time you pick up your pen and paper. To understand this section, you will need to remember that in my introduction, I introduced my organization as an NGO that provides youth mentorship in Ajegunle axis of Lagos. So everything I'm going to talk about, the problem statement now, will reflect what I told you last week about writing the introduction. I told you about my board of directors, success stories of the organization, and I mentioned our past grant performance. Today, I want to talk about the next step, which is problem statement. So the question is, what is a problem statement? Now, this is the section where you define the problem. Once you fail to define the problem properly, it will affect every segment of the proposal. Proposals are like a building block. The problem statement determines the goal of the project, which also determines the objectives, which determines the program description, the timeline, sustainability, evaluation, and budget. So once you miss it at being able to define your problem adequately, you're going to miss every other segment of the proposal. So it is important to define the problem properly. This section in problem statement, it can be divided into 4 different paragraphs. So to make it easy for you, I'm going to discuss paragraph by paragraph. Paragraph 1 is where you ask the question, what is the problem? Who is responsible for the problem? What happens if this problem is allowed to persist? What are the long-term consequences if this problem is not addressed now? So I'm going to give you an example using my NGO program in Ajegunle, Lagos. You will use this example as a template. Now, the second paragraph in a problem statement is where you're talking about data. The question is, what are the available data, published and unpublished, to back your claim that there is a problem? What is the demography of your target population? And finally, what is the capacity of your organization, and do you have the capacity to address the problem? Once you cover these 4 paragraphs, you have adequately addressed the problem statement. Now, let me attempt to respond to 4 of the listed points. So first, what is the problem, who is responsible, and what are the consequences if it is not addressed? Now, based on the proposal I started last week on youth mentorship program in Lagos, this is how I will respond if I were in your position. I will start by saying, the problem is that there is high rate of youth misdemeanor, truancy, and violent crime among youths in our local district here in Ajegunle, Lagos. I have defined a problem. The next, I want to talk now about the cause of the problem. I'll go ahead by saying the cause of these problems are increased unemployment, high rate of school dropout, increased use of drugs, and the lack of educational and enlightenment programs for residents in our community. You see what I've done? I told you what the problem is. I told you the cause of the problem. The next, I have to talk about the long-term consequences if the problem is not addressed. So to say that, this is what I'll say. If this problem is left unattended, the long-term consequences will result to increased unemployment, increased street gangs due to high rate of dropout, increased killings due to the use of drugs, general insecurity and pickpockets at bus stops in Ajegunle, increased rate of ignorance due to lack of educational programs. So what have I done? I have defined the problem, I have told you the cause of the problem, and I have told you the consequence if the problem is not solved. So for those of you trying to write grant proposals, whatever is your cause, whether it is women issue, whether it is widows issue, this is the pattern. You state what the problem is, you state the cause of the problem, and you state the long-term consequences if the problem is not addressed. With that, you have addressed the first paragraph. Now, let's move to the second paragraph. The second paragraph, you're going to talk about data. So if you tell a reviewer who stays in the US, who knows nothing about Nigeria, you need to give him sufficient data to back what you're trying to say. So if I were in your position and I'm still writing my proposal about the youth mentorship program in Ajegunle, this is how I will say. I will say available data from National Bureau of Statistics reveals that 55% of members within this population group in Lagos are unemployed. They lack basic job skills. And within the past decade, crime has increased as more middle-class families have left Ajegunle area of Lagos to high-income neighborhoods in the island. I want you to notice one thing. Notice here that I am referencing my data. I said according to National Bureau of Statistics. Reviewers check these things out. They check the statistics. That is the only way they can be able to authenticate that what you're saying is correct. So I will proceed by saying some of the identified risk factors for residents in Ajegunle would include poor performance in WAEC, poor performance in JAM, which is evidence in failing schools in the area as recorded on WAEC examination database in 2019. Notice one thing here, that whenever I talk about data, I make reference to where I got that data. That is what the reviewer wants to say. So when putting together your data, you can also reference some news materials or other publications. So you can say something like, a columnist in the Guardian newspaper, December 21st, 2020, opined that due to the absence of after-school homework assistance program in Ajegunle area, it has led to relocation of businesses out of the area. And coupled with the absence of comfortable recreational centers and educational assistance programs, crime rates have recently increased in Ajegunle. I'll try to conclude the data aspect of it by saying, Office of Statistics in their 2020 report further reveals that average family income in Ajegunle is 35% below Lagos statewide average family income. Notice here, I have provided some data to back my claims that there is a problem that needs funding in Ajegunle. So those of you writing proposals for whatever course you're trying to do, the first point I made was define the problem. What is the cause of the problem? What are the long-term consequences if this problem is not addressed? And what is the available data that you have? So based on this, I proceed to say, now based on the data so far presented, if we are funded, funds will be used to provide literacy education programs, integrated education programs on social service and recreational and cultural programs. Funds will be used to provide summer and weekend programs, conflict resolution strategies, which will reduce street gangs activities, parental skills for teenagers and single mothers, college readiness program, employment, counseling, training, and job placement programs. So I told the reviewer what the problem is. I told the reviewer the cause of the problem. I told the reviewer the long-term consequence if the problem is not addressed. I gave the reviewer available data, and I told the reviewer how the funds are going to be used. But there is one aspect that is missing in the problem statement, that is the demography. The reviewer will want to know the demography. What is the population you're talking about? What part of Nigeria are they? So the demography of a target population. By demography, we are talking about the composition of a particular human population. It includes the population statistics and income level. So in summary, demography is the statistical study of human population. So this is what I will say if I'm writing about the demography of that area. I will say something like, as reported by Bojan Report, I will have to quote wherever I'm getting that source. This is just an example. As reported by Bojan Project 2018, Ajegunle is located in the heart of Lagos. It is home of about 1 million people who live in poorly built structures with little or no infrastructure and poor standard of living, poor access to water, and improper sanitation. This is what the reviewer wants to hear. In Ajegunle, I'll proceed by saying the overall poverty rate is below 60% of other residents in Lagos Island, according to the most recent census data in Nigeria, and as reported by the National Bureau of Statistics 2019. Every claim you make in a problem statement has to be backed by data. You may also need to want to talk about the location where Ajegunle is located. So if I were in your position, this is what I would say. I would say Ajegunle is bordered on the west by Apapa Wharf and Tinkan Island, two of Nigeria's biggest seaports, through which over 70% of imported goods come into the country. Ajegunle has a population drawn from all the major tribal groups in Nigeria. So at this point, you can see that I have put together my data in a very precise manner and very presentable. One thing I need to mention at this point, and very important, is the source of your data, because reviewers check these sources. Even though it is a little difficult to get data in Nigeria, but there are some places you can actually pick up data to substantiate whatever you're trying to say in Nigeria. One of such places is the National Bureau of Statistics in Nigeria. You can go to their website. You also have the World Bank data book on Nigeria. Some people actually use Wikipedia. You can still have some very good information on demography of a target population in Wikipedia. And then most people use Our World in Data. It's a particular website called Our World in Data /Nigeria. You'll be able to see data about Nigeria to substantiate what you're trying to write about. The final section of a problem statement is the capacity of the organization. You've told the reviewer what the problem is, what is the cause of the problem, the long-term consequences if the problem is not addressed. You told the reviewer about the data you have. You need to tell the you've told the reviewer about your demography. Finally, you need to tell the reviewer about the capacity of your organization. Do you have the capacity to solve the problem? So if I were in your position writing on that same proposal, this is what I'll say. I'll say the executive director of Lagos Youth Foundation is a retired school headmistress with over 35 years in teaching and curriculum development in the industry. I've already placed the mark very high that if you give me this money, the person that is going to execute this program is very trained in what we are about to do. I can proceed by saying we have 6 program staff with a combined experience working with youths for the past 25 years. All our board of directors are actively involved in the program. We have a team of 16 volunteers drawn from our local Rotary Club who participate in the program. Listen carefully. I have used a well-recognized organization like Rotary Club to tell the reviewer that we have some volunteers from Rotary Club. What this means is the reviewer will say, oh, okay, you have a relationship with a Rotary Club. The reviewer will want to see a recommendation letter from Rotary, or a recommendation letter from that known organization that you have said you pull your volunteers from. So one of the things you do in the proposal before you submit it, you may need to have some recommendation letters from some well-known organization. So at this point, you have covered some of the major sections of the problem statement. Some of you may need additional materials to read at home and to get used to grant writing. I will post these materials on my Telegram group. Those who have not yet signed up on my Telegram group, go to my Telegram group and sign up, and you'll get additional materials that you can use. I will give additional assistance to members of the Telegram group. Those who have not joined the group should visit my Facebook like page and click on the Telegram link. So in conclusion, in discussing the problem statement, I talked about what the problem is, the cause of the problem, the long-term consequence if the problem is not addressed, the target demography, and available data, and I also spoke about the capacity of the organization. These are the major things that reviewers want to see in a problem statement. Once you write your problem statement thoroughly, at this point, you're beginning to get the attention of the reviewer. He knows you are real, you wrote a very good introduction, you've written a very good problem statement. I don't want to bore you so much because these things are technical writing, so for some people it is a form of mental stress. Absorb what I have said so far, write your introduction, keep space for your executive summary, write your problem statement, and you're going to be with me same time next week as I'll discuss the next aspect of grant writing, which are goals and objectives. After we talk about goals and objectives, we move on to either methodology or we move on to program description. So far, thank you for joining my channel, and I hope to see you all next week. Thank you and God bless you. Thank you very much.